Hello, my name is Angel and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video because I'm going to be ranking every book that I read in 2025 from worst to best. I want to say before we get in this video, there are still 3 books that I'm needing to finish. You likely know what they are if you've watched my past few videos. I have talked a lot about them, but I'll go ahead and say that those books are Blood of Elves, Rivals, and The Isle in the Silver Sea. I do intend to finish all 3 of these before the end of the year. I have a little over a week left to do that, but I'm so excited to film this video that I'm going to go ahead and do it. And also, I have a feeling that all 3 of these books are going to get 4 stars from me, which means I really like them. So in case you were curious, I'm still working my way through those, still enjoying them, and expect to love the finish. So wanted to let you know about those. On to my categories for today. At the very bottom, we have You Shall Not Pass. These books did not work out for me whatsoever, so they are at the bottom, unfortunately. Then above that, we have Peregrine Took. So these books were okay, they were solid reads, but they let me down in one way or another, but then at the end they did redeem themselves. Above that, we have, as you've likely guessed by now, my 4-star reads. So these are books that I really liked. I read them at the perfect time. And for this one, I am calling the category A Wizard is Never Late, Never Early. He arrives precisely when he means to. And then finally, at the very top, the best of the best, we have my friends, You Bow to No One. Ooh, I can't wait. So let's dive right in. So first in the list of You Shall Not Pass, I have Lucy Undying by Kiersten White. This is a Lucy reimagining from the Dracula novel, as well as a wholly original vampire story. So it's like 2 stories in one. And we have the journals of Lucy, so flashbacks to that time period, and then we have a modern day perspective from someone named Iris. Unfortunately, I did not think that these stories went together well. I did not like the ending. The first half I enjoyed, but the ending was so bad in my opinion that I just overall have come to terms with that I just didn't like this book, unfortunately. I have enjoyed Kiersten White's books in the past. She does a lot of reimaginings, but unfortunately this one did not work out for me. I thought the portrayal of Dracula was just way too cartoonish. It made him not seem like a real villain. I honestly did not care or think that he was so powerful that they needed to spend so much time going after him. Of course, Lucy and these other vampires that Dracula has changed has a lot of pent-up rage, but when you make the villain, the person who changed them, so cartoonish, it kind of loses its value. I don't really care. And then with Iris, I just got annoyed with her as a main character, and I feel like the story that she got could have been a wholly original story, and wish maybe that Kiersten White had just dropped the Lucy reimagining part, which is weird for me to say because I love retellings, reimaginings. That has been my favorite thing to read the past couple of years, but with this one, it just did not work. There were too many lines of cringy dialogue. Once you get to, I believe it's chapter 70, so a couple hundred pages in, the story just fell apart for me, and I unfortunately don't think this one was worth picking up. Then we have Pirate Latitudes by Michael Crichton, and I am so surprised to see this one on the list. I have owned this book for a few years, meaning to get to it whenever I was in the mood for a pirate story. And this book is it is a pirate story. It's an adventure story, but it felt like one of those old adventure movies with every cliche you can think of. Whatever you think should be in a pirate story, it's in this story, and it gets overwhelming, honestly. I wanted a story that was fun, and this was fun for the first half, but when you just go on and on and on, it needed some editing. But after finishing this book, I did research and found out this was published after Michael Crichton's death, so I'm sure this was not the finished copy, so I tried not to be too harsh on it, but as a reader, I was disappointed by it. I had so much expectations for a fun pirate story that felt like some of my favorite pirate movies, and it just let me down. Right, so now we have made it on to the next category, which is Peregrine Took. So these are books that were, or stories. The first one is a short story, so I'll just say stories that I enjoyed. They were fine. I liked them, but they didn't have that oomph to put them into really good or a new favorite. So The Conjurer's Wife by Sarah Penner. This is a short story about a conjurer's wife, and she is coming to terms with herself. Let's see how much I can remember about this short story first of all. The wife has been working with her husband to do these shows, and everyone is like, he can conjure anything out of thin air. She is she's trying to find out the truth about this and also her place in this world, not wanting to be overshadowed and lose her individuality. It was fun and feminist, but it was also, of course, a short story. It was short, and I didn't feel like I could really give it 4 stars. I'm likely not going to reread this one. It was just a fun read to start off the year. And the next one I'll talk about in this list, I read an e-arc for, so I read it in advance, and it is Gilded in Vengeance by Alyssa Maya Smith. This one, I really enjoyed when I read it. It was a lot of fun. This is a YA story pitched as a historical fantasy. So it's set in the Gilded Age New York, but with fantastical elements. There's people who are magic users, but as the Gilded Age setting implies, the rich are favored over the poor, and it's kind of, the magic is kind of controlled by this wealthy elite. And our main character in the start of the story, she is framed by them and her magic is taken away. So she wants revenge. So you get this very fun revenge plot and also this romance. Another guy who also wants revenge on the wealthy elite. I mean, come on. Initially, I give it 4 stars, but I'm putting it in this category because, as you'll see, as I've gone throughout the year, these books have kind of shifted a little bit in my ranking, and I would put it in, I liked it. Next, we'll talk about the other e-arc I read this year, so an advanced reader copy read electronically, and that was The Determined by Rachel Ruckert. I kind of had set myself up for failure with this one. I had expectations of what I wanted it to be, and it didn't deliver in that regard. And it's that the book is set during the golden age of pirates. So I expected some fun, rollicking pirate action. Hopefully not as much as we got in Pirate Latitudes, but definitely more than you get in The Determined. And that was a little unfair. This book is more of a realistic love story following Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who were, notorious female pirates that we don't have too much history about. So Ruckert gives a very, I don't want to say bland. It's not that it's bland, but I want readers to know what they're getting here. And it is a historical story with romance, but not between Anne Bonny and Mary Read. I'll just say that. But following their lives from childhood up until the very end. And the framing device for the story is Charles Johnson recording their lives for his book, A Gentle History of Pirates. So that's how we get them to tell their story, is Johnson comes in while they're in jail at this point, and then it goes back. In retrospect, they're talking about their lives. Since they go all the way back to their childhood and on, a lot of the book is not on the sea. The pace is slower because of that. Sympathetic take on these women and wanting to portray them as defying all expectations during this time period. Hopefully that made sense. By the end of the story, I did enjoy the ending, and then I read the author's note, and I did enjoy the author's note. Not really much sensationalism in this one. I guess that's the word I was looking for, is sensationalism. Not much of that in this one. I'm noticing that so many in this category I don't physically own, so I'll just keep in that thread to help editing me later, and talk about To the Gallows by Elizabeth Scarpness. This is a cozy romantasy, and I've had some you know, not a really good relationship with books pitched as romantasy, but if you put cozy in front of it, I'm curious. I picked this one up at the start of the year to have something to read at night on my e-reader, and it is what it says it is. It is a cozy romantasy. I honestly can't remember our main characters' names in this one. I'm sorry. But the of her position, she has the power to say that our male main character doesn't basically need to be hanged. So she evokes, what is it called? Evokes the, I'm not even sure what it's called. Oh my goodness. And basically says he can stay with me to prove that he doesn't need to be hanged for his crimes, something like that. So that's what gets our main characters together, and then you get a very cozy romance where they both look out for each other and take care of each other, and that's where you got to see the key elements, I feel like, of cozy stories, where they're making tea and meals and just chatting together and experiencing the town together. I feel so bad, but I'm being completely honest when I say that I don't really remember much of it, and which is obvious. I had fun reading it. It definitely kept me warm and cozy during January. Okay, moving on to the books that I own physically in this category. Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. This is a sequel to What the River Knows, so it is a YA historical fiction. Our main character, Inez, her parents have been researching in Egypt, and she receives word in the first book that they have passed away. So she is thinking something is up, and I need to get from Buenos Aires to Egypt to find out what is up, you know? She's wanted to go to Egypt and research herself, but her parents thought it was too dangerous for her to do, so now is her chance. She goes to Egypt and everything starts there. She is staying with her uncle, and her uncle has an assistant, Whitford Hayes, who of course she cannot stand. They can't stand each other, and I just really enjoyed the first book. I thought it was a lot of fun. There's mystery, there's adventure, and enemies to lovers romance. So I could not wait to pick up this book. Especially after how the first book ends. It ends on a cliffhanger. So I feel like Ibanez unfortunately let me and these characters down. Inez was just so annoying in this book. She made a lot of decisions that she shouldn't have made. I don't feel like they were in line with showing character growth and development after the first book. I wish she would have grown some more, especially with the gravity of the situation. If you've read this book, then you know what I'm talking about, but it just left a sour taste in my mouth, and it kept me reading the book, but then once I finished reading it, I was like, you know what, that actually was pretty awful, and if I don't know, if I saw that in a movie or read that in any other book, I just wouldn't like it. The reasoning behind what happens in this book just wasn't good enough for me. It could not excuse that action. And there were other reveals in this too, as a part of the mystery that started in What the River Knows, that were just so cheesy and really took me out of the book. So unfortunately, I did bring this one down a star, and I just feel like it was fun, but it wasn't everything that I hoped for in a sequel. Then we have The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. This is very much a vibes over plot book. We are following Lena, who has enlisted the help of the most renowned spiritualist from Paris to help her solve the murder of her sister. Her sister was very much into spiritualism and seances, so this is why Lena has really immersed herself in this world. The mystery was fun, but in my view, a little predictable, but the atmosphere was 100% there, and there's a sapphic romance that I really enjoyed. And I think this is the final book in this category. It is A Vile Season by David Ferraro. This one I liked. It is a good story. It just wasn't amazing for me. It may be for other readers. I did recommend this in my reads for autumn. autumn recommendations videos, pitched as Bridgerton meets The Bachelor in this queer Regency romance of a vampire competing for the heart of a duke. We are following Count Lucien, who is a pretty old vampire. He's been ran out of his castle by vampire hunters, and there's a vampire lord who is very upset with this. He strips Lucien of his powers and is basically telling him, you have to find out who this group of vampire hunters is, and so that we can bring them down, and then I will restore your powers to you. And this all leads him to going to this competition where everyone will be gathered competing for the heart of the Duke. And then Lucien gets a romance of his own. Maybe he has some humanity left. Maybe he's more human than he thought he was. And it's just a cute story. You get some games in this one as a part of the competition that were fun, and just some good friendships. The romance was cute. I thought it was a good story. I just didn't love it. I didn't fully connect to all the characters, and I read it very slowly, so I was just trying to remember everything when I would pick up where I left off. A beautiful cover, and yeah, I like this one. I like this one. On to the next category. A wizard arrives precisely when he means to. So these are books that I really enjoyed. I read them at the perfect time. And first, I want to talk about Medusa by Jessie Burton. This is such a beautiful book. This is a YA retelling of Medusa's story. I love the artwork. This is illustrated by Olivia Lomenick Gill, and it's so beautifully done. The writing also is so gorgeous. Definitely makes me want to read more Greek mythology retellings. Medusa's story is handled here with so much empathy, and you just really root for her. It's so accessible. It was a great way to kick off the year. Next is Sword of Destiny, Tales of the Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski. This one has more short stories that you need to read before diving into the novels. As you saw, I'm currently reading the first novel in the Witcher series, Blood of Elves. So earlier this year, I read this so that I could dive into that. I have really enjoyed reading about the world of the Witcher. A Witcher is someone who, through the power of elixirs, is kind of a mutant and paid to defeat monsters. So as you can imagine, you get all kinds of adventures and these short snippets of him defeating different monsters. So it's been really fun to read about that and also see that Geralt has some humanity. So in this list is Rizzio by Denise Mina. Rizzio was the secretary for Mary, Queen of Scots, and he was brutally murdered on a coup against her. And this is just detailing this. It is a little novella, and Denise Mina did a great job with it. It felt like I was right there watching it happen. It was brutal. It was bloody. But you can't look away. So really, really enjoyed this one. Another novella I read this year was Tell Them of Battles, Kings, and Elephants by Matthias Enard. This is translated from... I'm trying to find the name of the translator. Am I just not able to read? Okay, here it is. Translated from the French by Charlotte Mendel. Okay, so this is a historical fiction story that is so beautifully told. It's so poetic, lyrical. I really loved it. And the it's not technically chapters, it's like little vignettes that you get that make the book go by so fast, and they're so beautifully done. We're following this imagined meeting between Michelangelo and the Sultan of Constantinople, in which he flees Rome to go and do this job after Leonardo da Vinci's designs were rejected, and it is so beautiful. The descriptions you get of the Ottoman Empire, Michelangelo's process, it was just so beautifully done. I really enjoyed this one. Then I read a book written in verse that I'd had on my shelf for a while because Elizabeth Acevedo, who wrote The Poet X, which I loved, blurbed it and said, "Nothing short of magic, one of the best writers of our times." This book is Home is Not a Country by Sophia Elhio. Our main character is an immigrant who doesn't feel like she belongs in this new place, but she also doesn't feel like she has enough attachment to the place that her mom came from to feel like she belongs there either. So she really is grappling with this split identity and wanting to be someone else who has this attachment, who has it all. It is so beautifully told, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I feel like I've read a Beauty and the Beast retelling, at least one, for the past couple of years now. So this year I read Beauty by Robin McKinley. This was my first time reading anything by Robin McKinley, and I really, really enjoy her writing, and will be checking out her other books. This was such a beautiful, captivating take on Beauty and the Beast. We are following Beauty, who, that's her nickname, and she's never liked this nickname. She doesn't feel beautiful like her sisters. Her father comes home with the tale of this beast, and he's going to have to go to stay there. And Beauty, being the brave person she is, says, "No, I will go in your place." And that is where we get the introduction to the beast. I really enjoyed this retelling because it's just so kind. The beast is kind the whole time, and it really felt like spring. And I read this in the springtime. I loved, even though you see all the seasons in this book, I really enjoyed reading it in the springtime. It was just a perfect read. It came at the perfect time. I was also introduced to one of my new favorite main characters in the book series, that is Emma M. Lyon. This year I read volumes 1 through 4 of the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower. I really, really enjoy this series. Emma is just so witty, and her observations are just so wonderful to follow. The people that she interacts with in this neighborhood are just so lovely. Each volume gets better and better once we've established our relationship with Emma and the neighborhood. I'll read the back of the first volume. The year is 1883, and Emma M. Lyon has returned to her London neighborhood of St. Crispian's, but Emma's plans for a charmed and studious life are sabotaged by her eccentric cousin Archibald, her formidable Aunt Eugenia, and the slightly odd denizens of St. Crispian's. These books are so good to read all year long because they are chronicling every season of Emma's life. There are discussions of grief because Emma has lost a lot of people in her life, but also so many bright moments, and I really, really enjoyed these books. I did find a pirate story that I actually enjoyed this year, and that was Pirates by Celia Reese. This is a young adult story following two girls, Nancy Kington, who is fleeing an arranged marriage, and then Minerva Sharp, a runaway plantation slave, as they become pirates themselves. And I thought this was a lot of fun. There's an element of suspense there where they're being followed by the awful guy that Nancy is running away from. It had just the right amount of pirate elements and historical touches that helped me enjoy this one more than Pirate Latitudes. I had this book on my shelf for so long and finally read it. This is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, translated from the Japanese. What a cute book. Following this woman named Kiko, who works at a convenience store, and she's worked there for years, and she is fine with that. She's content, but the people around her aren't, and they have something to say about it, and societal norms they're trying to pressure her into. And this is definitely a weird little book. I mean, some people have said it's funny, others have said it's not funny. It's just, when you just have to read this one. I couldn't help but laugh at some of it just because of how different it was from anything I'd read before, and I really, really enjoyed it. Another book I'd been meaning to get to for years and finally got to this year was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is the foundational text for the dark academia aesthetic. I feel like we are following this group of eccentric students. They all have this one weird, well, I guess I shouldn't say weird. It says on the back here, charismatic. They all have this one charismatic classics professor, and they just all get caught up in doing bad things. Donna Tartt is an excellent writer. It's definitely showcased in this book, so I'm glad I finally read it. Beautiful descriptions of the campus, of the seasons changing, and what an interesting look at people losing their sense of morality and how far you'll go to try to belong to something. A great critique of this kind of elite academia. All right, so we've got Beowulf, a new translation by Maria Davana Headley. This translation is very modern and contemporary. It's a feminist translation. Our translator says in the introduction here, "My love affair with Beowulf began with Grendel's mother, the moment I encountered her in an illustrated compendium of monsters, a slithery greenish entity standing naked in a swamp, knife in hand. I was about 8 and on the hunt for any sort of woman warrior. Wonder Woman and She-Ra were fine, but Grendel's mother was better. She had a ferocious look and seemed to give precisely zero fucks. Not that I had that language to describe her at that point in my life. Her experience with reading Beowulf has resulted in this pretty radical new translation, where there is slang, curse words, but also more looking into gender and a sympathetic take on Grendel and his mother. So I enjoyed that, and we'll continue reading different translations of Beowulf. Also in this category is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. A great gothic story, creepy, unsettling. We have a family who may be a family of murderers living in this isolated house on the hill. The villagers don't like them. A quiet, creepy read. The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Spear is a historical children's fiction story where our main character is a teen and she is coming from Barbados to live with her family in Puritan, Connecticut. Not being from the area is already putting her on the spot as kind of as an outsider, but also the woman that she befriends, Hannah Tupper, has already been labeled a witch. Just felt like a story that you would read in school, and it was just a quick read with good themes. Like I said earlier in this video, I love a good reimagining. Bonus points if it's queer and if it's funny. And that is what My Contrary Mary by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows gave me. I love this series so much. So My Contrary Mary follows Mary, Queen of Scots, in this funny fictional take on her story in which she gets a happy ending, also with fantastical elements where people can turn into animals. If they do so, they're called Ethians. People who can't turn into animals are called Verities, and that's how the political and religious conflict is portrayed, as Ethians versus Verities. Really love this one. Love the friendships, the romance, every character, every POV that we got, and I think more people should pick up these books. All right, so a book that I actually got in a blind date with a book. I usually don't get books that I've had on my radar and actually been wanting to read in those, but I did this time, and I got A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. What a beautiful cover. This book is all about folklore and rivals to lovers. It's a sapphic romance. It was just a lot of fun. Very atmospheric, very vibey. There's a murder mystery, a desire for our main character to prove herself and that she belongs, and I had a lot of fun with this one. Then we have Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. I really enjoyed this graphic memoir. I thought this was a very brave and vulnerable story about exploring gender, identity, and sexuality, and I think it's a very important book that people should pick up. Yes, it will make you uncomfortable, but it's good to read books that make you uncomfortable and show you a different perspective. So in this category, I do have a few books also that I read electronically. The Butcher of the Forest by Premi Muhammad. This was a beautiful novella, read like a fairy tale, where we are following a woman who has been given this impossible task of going and rescuing these children from a creepy forest. Really enjoyed that one and thought the author did a great job of developing a relationship between the main character and the reader in such few pages. And then Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley. This was such a beautiful biography of Jane Austen. Definitely recommend the audiobook because it's read by Worsley. You can tell how much she loves Austen's work, and it was just so beautiful. It's framed around the places that Austen lived at, so you get to see where she wrote the most and where she didn't write at all. And the connections she had, the family members who would have really informed what she knew about the sea and what she could write about. Editing me coming on to say that I can't believe I left off one of the best audiobooks that I listened to this year. That is The Serviceberry, Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Robin Wall Kimmerer is an indigenous botanist. She wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, which I read the year before and really loved. So then I picked up The Serviceberry, her newest release, and this is a short little book. Love that it's read by the author because Kimmerer just has such a wonderful voice. She's really able to bring to life her words and make it so much more emotional and impactful. This one really explores changing our mindset to one of gratitude and building community, and she does that by bringing up object thinking versus gift thinking. So when you view something as an object, you're more likely to buy more of it and see it as a commodity and get rid of it, just promoting this cycle of waste versus gift thinking. If your aunt made you a scarf, you would love that scarf. It would have meaning attached to it, so you would be more likely to care for it and keep it for years to come. Also addresses a market economy versus ecological economy, just being grateful for your community, developing relationships, and looking out for one another. So I really loved this little book, and I think everyone should read it. Again, it's very short, it's very digestible, and if you can, get the audiobook, which is read by the author. The last book we have in this category is such a random book that I just finished, actually. It is Hitman, My Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling by Bret the Hitman Hart. Sorry, had to pause there because this video is taking forever and I needed to charge my camera again. But yes, the last book in this category is Bret Hart's book. It is his autobiography based on recordings that he took while he was wrestling, which is so fascinating. And it's how he's able to recall these minute details about matches. Like reading this book, some of these matches, I felt like I was there, and I didn't see these in real time. Bret Hart was before my time, before I started watching wrestling. When I started watching wrestling, it was John Cena, and then when I quit watching wrestling, it was the whole thing with the Shield with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins and all them. So I am just getting back into it, and I'm more so interested in the psychology behind pro wrestling, the storytelling, because it is storytelling and it's so fascinating. So who better to learn about that through than the excellence of execution himself, Bret Hart. And Bret Hart definitely thinks highly of himself. That is something to keep in mind. You know, he has a big ego, but he's also great at his craft, and his family is great at this craft. It's so fascinating to, you know, learn about the business through someone who has grown up in the business, whose father has mentored so many different wrestlers, and all that goes in, or all that should go into matches. I just really enjoyed reading this. It was very good. It was very good. It was emotional. There are some things that I feel well, you can see how much he cares about the business, and I've just been doing a deep dive into that and WWE controversies and everything like that. So it led me to here. So don't know if any of my viewers care at all about pro wrestling, so I'm not going to go into details. If you want a video completely about what I learned through his book, I might do that. Just let me know in the comments below, but that's all I'll say for now. Finally, we are in the final category, which is You Bow to No One. These are books that I loved and considered new favorites. So let's start with Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kasulki. This one is a book that I don't know if I would love so much if I hadn't worked in an office a couple of years by the time I read this one, because it's a story told entirely through Slack messages. So if you work in an office and you have to communicate through Slack or some other communications platform, you know how it is. And it was just so funny reading a story told this way, so readable, goes by so fast. And it was just so funny and absurd. Our main character he becomes trapped inside the Slack messages, and no one believes him at first, think he's just slacking. It was very fun. I don't know if it would be for everyone, but I really loved it. Then I read a poetry collection, which it seems like, is this like the only poetry collection I read this year? Thrall by Natasha Trethewey. I really loved this. It was so beautifully done about race and identity. So with like this thread of historical paintings and figures popping up. Trethewey herself has an interesting history, and she has already served as a poet laureate. So very, very well done. I would like to read more poetry next year, just looking through this list. Oh, I meant to talk about this one first because it was a reread. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Sorry, I have moved again because my camera died again. So I am keeping it on the charger, and I am just going to have to sit on the floor. But yes, Pride and Prejudice, love this book. They were showing the 2005 Pride and Prejudice movie in theaters earlier this year, so I reread this to go see the movie. And yeah, I just love this story, so no surprise, this is still a beautiful story in my opinion, 5 out of 5 stars. Then I started a new favorite series, The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell, the Saxon Tales series. We are following, it's a Viking story, but it's so good. We're following Uhtred of Bebbanburg, who is grappling with his identity and destiny, controlling everything that he does. There's so many battle scenes and also just these great historical descriptions. It is such good historical fiction that is not slow, not boring, and really love these characters and can't wait to continue the series. Next 2 books were my most anticipated reads of the year, so I'm very happy that I actually read them this year. Usually I say I'm anticipating something and then I actually don't pick it up. So starting with Everything is Tuberculosis, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. This is a short book, a short nonfiction book, but it is so good. This is a perfect starter nonfiction book, and this is the book that I have been waiting for John Green to release. Just knowing how much he's talked about tuberculosis in the past and his frustrations with it because it's a curable disease. It's really calling people to do what they can to in the fight, to cure tuberculosis, and understanding the root of the issue. So accessible, so impactful, and I think everyone should read this. And then the next one is Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. This is the 3rd book in the Legendborn cycle. I love this story so much. Tracy Deonn does such a great job reimagining the Arthurian legend, and it feels like old school YA. It's so good. I love the plot, the magic system, the romance, the setting, it being in the South. If you can't tell by my accent, I live in the South. You have a secret society. There's so much that happens in this installment, which of course I can't tell you because it's the 3rd in the series, but if you have not started the Legendborn cycle, please do so. The first book is called Legendborn. It is so good. If you love Arthurian legends, if you love fantasy, if you love YA, read this series. So good. Then we have a classic, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I really love this story, and I actually teared up while reading it. It's following a single day in the life of Clarissa Dalloway. She's planning a party, and the way that Woolf writes is you're getting these thoughts. It's just going through these thoughts of everyone. It seems kind of fragmented at first, but then you get caught up in it, and it just becomes a quilt of a story, and it's just beautiful. Makes you examine the human condition in a way you probably haven't yet if you haven't read Wolf. So really loved it and could see myself rereading this one. Then we've got Old School by Tobias Wolff. This is such a beautiful book that I will come back to 100%. It says it's a finalist for the Penn Faulkner Award, and I can definitely see why. We're following an unnamed boy at this elite prep school that hosts these writing competitions every year, and then they bring in pretty well-known authors. In this story, it's set in 1960, and the authors we get are Robert Frost, Ernest Hemingway. It's just very beautifully done. If you love stories set on a school campus, exploring the human condition, very literary, this is the book for you. And then finally, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Love this story so much. I could not believe by the end of it how much I love this story and how much it's stuck with me. As I keep saying, this is a haunted house story, but it is so much more than a haunted house story. There's so many lenses that you can look at this story through and analyze it. I loved our main character, Eleanor, and just being in her head. I was fully, every time I pick up this book, basically, I was fully immersed in it. Nothing else, nothing that was happening around me mattered, only this story. So it was published in 1959. But it reads so easily. I would say if you're wanting to get into classics, read this. This is technically a classic. So good. 4 people come to this house. Dr. Montague, who is wanting specifically to research the occult, haunted houses. And then Theodora, Eleanor, and Luke, who is the future heir of Hill House. And once all 4 of them arrive, things start happening and you start questioning, and they start questioning things, but you as a reader also start questioning things. It's so, you don't exactly know like for a fact what happens, and that, at least for me, is what made it have such a lasting impression. Those are all the books that I read this year. I had such a great reading year. I feel very fortunate that only 2 out of all 43 books that I read this year were flops. The rest were slays. A great reading year for me. I hope that you also had a great reading year. Please share in the comments below your worst and best reads. I'd love to chat with you. I hope that next year brings even more good reads your way. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a nice day.